The day I came back home, I wasn't prepared for silence. Not the peaceful kind, not the kind that welcomes you after a long day. This silence felt wrong, heavy, unfamiliar. I stood at the gate for a moment longer than usual, my hand resting on the metal latch, my heartbeat slightly uneven for reasons I couldn't explain. Something inside me hesitated, like a quiet warning I didn't yet understand, but I ignored it because this was my home, or at least it was supposed to be. I pushed the gate open. The first thing I noticed wasn't what I saw, it was what I heard. Laughter, loud, carefree, comfortable laughter. My grip tightened around my bag. That didn't make sense. I hadn't told anyone I was coming back early. Slowly, I stepped toward the front door. My chest felt tight now, like something invisible was pressing against it. And then I saw it, shoes. Not one pair, not two, five, maybe six, different sizes, different styles, none of them mine. I froze. For a second, my mind tried to make excuses. Maybe guests, maybe a visit. Maybe something normal, but deep down I already knew something wasn't right. I opened the door. The sound hit me first, music playing, voices overlapping, laughter echoing through walls that used to hold only my quiet evenings. Then I stepped inside, and everything changed. There, in the center of my living room on my couch, was my sister, Madison, sitting comfortably, legs tucked under her, holding a drink, laughing with people I had never seen before, like she belonged there, like this was her space, not mine. She looked up at me casually, like I had just walked into a place I was visiting. "Oh," she said, smiling lightly, "you're home early." Home, the word echoed in my mind. Home, I looked around slowly. My furniture had been rearranged. The cushions I had carefully chosen were gone, the small lamp I loved missing. Even the scent of the house was different. This wasn't my space anymore, not really. "My house," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake, but something inside me did. Madison tilted her head slightly, like I had said something amusing. "Yeah," she said slowly, "about that, about that." Three words that made my chest tighten so hard it almost hurt. "What does that mean?" I asked. She leaned back, completely relaxed. "Dad said I could stay here longer," she replied. "He thinks it makes sense." Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, coldly. "That's not his decision to make," she shrugged. "Then you should tell him that." That night I called my father. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I didn't cry, I just wanted clarity, but what I got instead was something worse. Calmness. "Harper," he said in that steady voice of his, "you still have the house." Still, as if that word alone was supposed to comfort me. "But Madison needs stability right now. Stability at my expense." "So moving strangers into my home is helping?" I asked quietly. "It's temporary," he replied. Temporary, that word again. Everything was temporary, everything was justified, everything except me. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, painfully, my home stopped feeling like mine. My things were moved without asking, rooms were changed, decisions were made. And every time I spoke up, I became the problem. "Why are you being so difficult?" my mother asked one evening. Difficult. That word cut deeper than it should have, because I wasn't being difficult. I was just being erased. The breaking point came on a night I will never forget. I came home late. The house was quiet, too quiet this time, but the kitchen lights were on, voices low, serious. I stopped in the hallway. I didn't mean to listen, but then I heard it, my father's voice. "She'll adjust," he said, a pause, then, "It's just a house, just a house, just a house." Those words didn't just hurt, they shattered something inside me, because to him it was nothing. But to me, it was everything: my independence, my effort, my proof that I could stand on my own. And in that moment, I realized something painful. They didn't see me, not really. I stepped into the kitchen, they both looked at me. "Dad," I said calmly, "we need to talk." He nodded. Of course. I looked at Madison, then back at him, and then I asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Are you giving my house to her?" Silence, not confusion, not denial, silence. And that silence told me everything. "She needs it more than you do right now," he finally said, "more than me," as if ownership was about need, as if effort didn't matter, as if I didn't matter. "I worked for this," I said. "You can build something else," he replied, "something else just like that, as if my life could be replaced as easily as furniture." That night I didn't argue. I didn't scream, I didn't fight, because something inside me had changed. Not anger, not pain, something sharper, clearer, understanding. They weren't asking, they weren't negotiating. They had already decided. And their biggest mistake, they forgot one thing: the truth written in ink, the truth printed on paper, the truth that didn't care about feelings. The house was in my name. The next morning I made a decision, not emotional, not impulsive, strategic. I wasn't going to stop them, I was going to let them continue. Because sometimes the strongest response isn't loud, it's quiet, it waits. And then it hits when the truth can no longer be ignored. I picked up my phone and I made a call they never expected. A lawyer. The lawyer's office didn't feel like a place where emotions belonged. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that forces truth to sit in front of you without distraction. I sat across from him, my hands resting calmly in my lap, even though my thoughts were anything but calm. Start from the beginning, he said, so I did, not dramatically, not emotionally, just facts. The house, the documents, the ownership, the way my sister moved in, the way my father allowed it, the way I was slowly being pushed out of something that legally, undeniably belonged to me. He listened without interrupting, no reactions, no judgment, just attention. And when I finished, he leaned back slightly and asked one simple question. Do you want them out, or do you want to give them a chance to fix it? I didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't just about a house. It was about respect, about boundaries, about being seen. I want the truth to be undeniable, I said finally. He nodded once. Then we proceed legally. Over the next few days, everything became structured, organized, cold, documents were drafted, ownership verified, notices prepared, every detail precise. Every word intentional, no room for misunderstanding, no space for manipulation. Meanwhile, back at the house, nothing had changed, and that was exactly what I wanted. Madison still laughed with her friends, still hosted like she owned the place, still spoke about future plans as if she was staying permanently. I'm thinking of redecorating the guest room, I overheard her say one afternoon. Guest room, I almost smiled, because she didn't realize she was the guest. My mother continued pretending everything was fine, calling me occasionally. Don't overthink things, she'd say softly. I'm not, I would reply, but she didn't understand. This wasn't overthinking. This was awareness, and my father, he stayed quiet, confident, certain, as if the situation was already settled, as if I would eventually adjust. That word again, adjust, no. I wasn't going to adjust, I was going to act. The day everything shifted felt completely ordinary. That's what made it powerful, no storm, no warning, just truth, arriving quietly. I walked into the house in the afternoon. The same house that once felt like safety now felt like a stage. And this time I wasn't alone. Madison was in the living room again, of course she was. Scrolling through her phone completely at ease, she looked up and smiled casually. Oh hey, like nothing had changed, like nothing was about to change, you're back. Yes, I said calmly. I stepped forward slowly, measured, controlled. My father was there too, sitting in his usual spot. Harper, he said, we should talk. I already did, I replied. And then I placed the documents on the table. There was a moment of silence, the kind that stretches, the kind that knows something is about to break. Madison frowned slightly. What is this? My father picked up the papers. At first, his expression didn't change, then slowly it did. Confusion, focus, recognition, and finally realization. You filed legal ownership enforcement, he said quietly. Yes, Madison sat up straighter. What does that even mean? I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't soften my words. It means, I said evenly, that the house belongs to me, and you've been living here without permission. The room went still, completely still. That's not true, Madison said quickly. Dad said, your father doesn't own this house, I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. I do. My mother stepped forward, her face tense. Harper, we were just trying to help. I understand that, I said, and I meant it, but understanding didn't mean accepting. But helping someone doesn't mean taking something that isn't yours. My father looked at me differently now, not like a daughter, not like someone who would quietly accept things, but like someone who had just drawn a line, a real one. You didn't have to escalate this, he said. There was a hint of frustration in his voice now. Finally, emotion. I didn't escalate it, I replied. I documented it. That's when it hit them. This wasn't an argument anymore, it wasn't a discussion. It wasn't something that could be smoothed over with calm words and family logic. This was real, legal, final. Madison's confidence started to crack. This is my home, she said quietly. Not confidently this time, almost uncertain, I shook my head. No, I said, it never was. The silence that followed felt heavier than any shouting ever could. The documents were clear. Deadlines were set. Options were given, vacate voluntarily or face formal eviction. No gray area, no emotional negotiation, just truth. For the first time since all of this began, they had no control. And I didn't feel powerful, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, grounded, certain, because this was never about revenge. It was about reality. Over the next few days, the house changed again, but this time in a different way. The laughter stopped, the visitors disappeared, the energy shifted. Quiet, heavy, real. Madison avoided me, my mother called more than ever, and my father remained silent, until one evening, my phone rang, it was him. Can we meet? He asked, I agreed. Because some truths aren't meant to be delivered in documents, they're meant to be faced. The cafe was quiet, not empty but quiet enough that every word felt like it carried weight. I arrived a few minutes early, not because I was nervous, but because I needed a moment to sit with everything that had happened and everything that was about to be said. When my father walked in, I almost didn't recognize him, not physically, but something about him felt different, less certain, less in control. He sat across from me, placing his phone on the table like he always did. A habit, structured, predictable. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then finally, "I didn't think you'd go this far," he said. There was no anger in his voice, just something quieter, something closer to disappointment. I looked at him steadily. "I didn't think I had to," I replied. That landed. I could see it in the way his posture shifted slightly. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have a response ready. "You could have talked to me," he said after a pause. "I did," I answered, not sharply, not emotionally, just truth. "You decided." Another silence, but this one was different. He wasn't avoiding it anymore, he was sitting in it. "I was trying to help your sister," he said. "I know, and she needed stability." "I know," he exhaled slowly, frustration starting to surface. "Then why make it into this?" I leaned forward slightly. And this time I didn't soften anything. "Because you made a decision about my life," I said, "without me." His eyes met mine, fully, no avoidance, no deflection. "You didn't ask," I continued. "You didn't discuss it. You didn't even consider that maybe this mattered to me. It's just a house, Harper." "No," I interrupted quietly. And that word "no" felt heavier than anything I had said before. "It's not just a house." I let the silence stretch, because he needed to hear it, really hear it. "It's the first thing I built on my own," I said. "My responsibility, my effort, my independence. And you treated it like it was optional." His expression shifted, not defensive. Not dismissive, something else, something harder, recognition. "I thought you'd understand," he said quietly. There it was, the truth, not justification, expectation. I nodded slowly. "I did understand," I said. "That's why I stayed quiet for so long." That hit harder than anything else, because it wasn't anger, it was reality. "And that was your mistake," I added, not harsh. Not cruel, just honest. "You thought my silence meant agreement." He looked down at the table. For a long moment he didn't speak, and in that silence I saw something I had never seen before. Not authority, not control, but reflection. "I crossed a line," he said finally. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and for a second I didn't respond, because I needed to feel it. After everything, after being dismissed, ignored, pushed aside, he finally said it. "Yes," I replied softly. "You did." He nodded slowly. "I didn't think about it from your perspective." "No," I said, "you didn't." Another pause, but this one was lighter, not resolved, but shifting. "What happens now?" he asked. That question mattered, because for the first time he wasn't deciding, he was asking. "They move out," I said, simple, clear, no hesitation. And after that, I held his gaze. "That depends on what? On whether you understand that this wasn't about a house." He didn't interrupt, he didn't argue, he just listened. "It was about respect," I said. "About boundaries, about treating me like I have a say in my own life." His jaw tightened slightly, not in anger but in acceptance. "You're right," he said, 3 words, simple but heavy. I should have handled it differently. I studied him carefully because this moment mattered, not what he said but whether he meant it, and for the first time I believed him. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "I'm just not going to disappear in my own life." That stayed between us. Unspoken but understood, we didn't hug. We didn't pretend everything was okay. This wasn't that kind of moment, but something had shifted, something real. When we stood up to leave, he paused. "Harper," I looked at him. "I am proud of you." That caught me off guard, not because I needed it, but because of when he chose to say it. "Thank you," I said. And for the first time since everything began, there was no tension in my chest. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally been heard. And sometimes that's where healing starts. The house felt different now, not just quieter, but exposed. Like everything that had been hidden beneath comfort and assumption was now sitting in the open, impossible to ignore. The laughter was gone, the music had stopped, even the air felt heavier. Real. Madison avoided me at first, not in an obvious way. She was still there, still moving through the house, but carefully. Quietly, like someone who no longer felt certain of their place. I noticed the small things, the way she stayed in her room longer, the way she didn't invite anyone over anymore. The way her voice had lost that casual confidence, that certainty that this was hers. Days passed like that, tense, unspoken, until one evening everything finally surfaced. I was in the kitchen making tea. A simple routine, something familiar, something that still felt like mine. I heard footsteps behind me, soft, hesitant. I didn't turn around immediately. But I knew it was her. Harper. Her voice was different, not defensive, not casual, careful. I turned slowly. Madison stood there, arms crossed, not out of confidence but discomfort. For a moment neither of us spoke, then she took a small step forward. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." There it was, the truth, simple, honest. I nodded once. "I know." Her expression tightened slightly, not in anger, in realization. "I thought you just," she hesitated, searching for the words, "let it go." That stung, not because it was surprising, but because it was true. "I almost did," I admitted. She looked up at me quickly. That wasn't what she expected. but that would have meant letting go of more than just the house, I continued. Her eyes shifted, she understood. We stood there in silence for a moment, then she exhaled slowly like she had been holding something in for too long. I didn't plan this, she said. I just needed somewhere to stay at first. I believed her, that part at least, but then she looked around the kitchen, it got easy. Easy, that word again. Dad said it was fine. I didn't respond because that wasn't the point. And you didn't say anything, she added quietly. There it was again, that assumption, that silence meant permission. I shouldn't have had to, I said, not harsh, just honest. She nodded slowly, and this time she didn't argue. I know, she whispered, that moment was heavier than any fight we could have had. Because this wasn't about winning anymore, it was about seeing the truth clearly. I took advantage of it, she said after a pause. I watched her carefully, not judging, just listening. I didn't think about what it felt like for you. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and that's when I realized this wasn't just guilt, this was something deeper. I just felt like everything always worked out for you, she continued, and for once I thought maybe it could work out for me too. That surprised me, not the words but the emotion behind them. You think this worked out for me? I asked gently. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I think she saw it, not just the house, not just the independence. But the responsibility, the pressure, the effort. I didn't see that, she admitted. No, I said quietly, you didn't. Another silence, but this one wasn't tense, it was honest. I'm sorry, she said, no excuses, no justifications, just two words, and somehow that mattered more than anything else. I nodded slowly. Okay, not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. I'll move out, she added. I could hear the weight in her voice, the acceptance. I know, I replied. She looked around the house one last time, not like she owned it. Not like she was planning something, but like she finally understood what it really was, not just a place but something built, earned, personal. I really thought you wouldn't do anything, she said quietly. I met her gaze, that was the mistake. She gave a small, sad nod, and in that moment something between us changed, not broken. Not fixed, but real. Over the next few days she packed her things. No arguments, no drama, just quiet movement, acceptance. My mother tried to hold everything together, calling me. Talking to Madison, trying to soften what couldn't be softened, but even she had started to understand. This wasn't something you could smooth over. This was a boundary. And once it was drawn, it stayed. The day Madison left, there was no goodbye speech, no emotional scene, just a pause at the door. She looked back once. Take care of it, she said softly. I nodded. I always have. And then she left, the door closed, and for the first time in a long time, the house was silent again. But this time, the silence felt different. It felt like mine. The house was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt returned. I stood in the living room for a long moment. The same space that once felt unfamiliar, like it had been taken from me without permission, now felt grounded again. Mine, not just legally, but emotionally. The furniture was still slightly out of place. Some things were missing. Some things had changed, but that didn't matter because what had really been taken was never just physical, it was control. Respect, voice, and now all of that was back. Days passed slowly after that, not because there was tension, but because there was space. Space to think, space to feel. Space to understand what had really happened. My family didn't disappear, but something between us had shifted permanently. My mother called less frequently now, not out of distance but caution. She chose her words more carefully, as if she finally understood that peace shouldn't come at the cost of fairness. My father was different too, not dramatically, not suddenly warm or expressive. But quieter, more aware. He didn't try to justify what happened again. He didn't explain it away. He didn't minimize it. He accepted it. And sometimes acceptance is more powerful than apology. Weeks later, we met again, not because we had to, but because we both chose to. This time there was no tension, no unspoken conflict sitting between us, just honesty. I've been thinking about everything, he said. I nodded. So have I. He looked at me carefully. I treated you like you'd always adjust. That word again, but this time it sounded different. I know, I said, and I didn't realize, he continued, that I was asking you to give up something important without even asking. There was no defense in his voice, no pride, just truth. That won't happen again. I believed him, not because of the words, but because of everything that had already changed. I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were, I said. He nodded slowly. I don't think they can. And he was right, because some moments don't just pass. They redefine things, they redraw boundaries, they reset expectations. They show you what was always there but never clearly seen. Madison and I didn't speak for a while after she left, not out of anger, but because we both needed distance. Time. When we finally did talk again, it wasn't like before. There was no easy laughter, no casual assumptions, but there was something else, something quieter, more honest. I really didn't think you'd stand up to it, she admitted one day. I looked at her for a moment, then nodded. I know. She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. That was a big miscalculation. I almost smiled back. Yeah, I said softly, it was. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no sudden closeness, but there was understanding. And sometimes that's enough, because not every relationship goes back to what it was. Some evolve, some reset, some become something different but healthier, stronger. Weeks later, I stood in the house again. Alone, peaceful, the sunlight came through the windows just the way I remembered. Soft, warm, quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at ease, not because everything was perfect, not because nothing had happened, but because I had done something I had never done before. I chose myself. I didn't disappear to keep the peace. I didn't stay silent to avoid conflict. I didn't allow someone else to decide what I should accept. I acted. And in doing that, I didn't just reclaim a house. I reclaimed something far more important: my boundaries, my voice, my place in my own life. Revenge was never really the point. Because in the end, this wasn't about hurting them. It was about facing the truth. And truth doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to fight. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists. Clear, unavoidable, and when it finally surfaces, it reveals everything. Who respected you, who didn't, who assumed, who understood. I didn't lose my family. But I stopped letting them define my limits. And that was the moment I truly gained everything back. The end.